welcome everybody to the CultureWorks live stream series. I'm Chester Elton, and this is my dear friend and co-author Adrian Gostick, waving to the crowd there. Thanks, Adrian. Listen, we love to come to you every month here with some great ideas on how you can build a better culture at work. And we highlight a lot of the work that Adrian does writing for Forbes magazine. And you had a really interesting topic this time around about, do you suffer from workplace addiction? I don't think when we think of addictions, we kind of go right to cocaine and we go to
Oh, you accelerated fast there, didn't you?
yeah. And yet many of us at some point in our careers, if not currently, we suffer from workplace addiction. So flesh that out for me a little bit, Adrian.
Yeah.
What do you mean when you talk about workplace addiction?
Well, back in the quaint days, I remember getting my first cell phone and leaving it in the car because I didn't want to be bothered in the evenings by, by people from work and things. Now, if we get panicky if they're not with us every moment, right? And so something has changed along the way where we are now 24/7. And as you know, our brains, when we wrote Anxiety at Work, our brains need time when they're not only not working, they need times when they're not thinking about work.
Right.
But we have long left that. And now you take it to the extremes too. There are people who just, they're regularly working 60, 80-hour weeks. And much of that is driven by fear versus, wanting to achieve.
Well, and you talk about, that our identity is so closely attached to work in so many cases. I loved your example of, we'll call him Colin. I don't know if that's his real name, where, he wanted to be known as the guy that always got everything done, that sacrificed everything, and that he was the epitome of the perfect employee. And you made the comment to go, yeah, but at what cost?
Right.
What do we really want to be known for? The guy that spent all that time at work, or the good friend, the good neighbor, the good father, the good husband?
Right. And having a balanced life. Yeah.
Exactly.
We're not saying don't do good work. Of course not. We're saying absolutely be committed to your job. We go in and we train in organizations. This, past week I was just with a really big organization talking to them about how you get the best out of your people. But you don't get the best by crushing people's souls and spirit. And at some point there needs to be a point where we turn off and we have a balance between work and our personal lives.
Yeah. That badge of honor, that you talk about of being the one that's always working the 80-hour weeks.
Yeah.
We've really got to cure that. Well, you talk about 4 ways to break that habit. And reevaluate your goals. I mean, that's really where it starts, right? What do you want to be remembered for, right?
Yeah. And our mentor Marshall Goldsmith talks about this now and then, right? He says, when you ask, and you and I, we do a lot of leadership coaching, a lot of executive coaching. When we ask a leader, what do you want to be known for? What legacy do you want to leave? They often talk about, I want to develop others. I want to be a great husband or father, etc. And yet, what do they spend all their time doing? Is putting out fires. They're not spending the time doing those things that they really want to do in life. So when we really reevaluate and every day we're focused on, I want this to be my big goal, we can become a lot more focused.
Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? It's the old Stephen Covey thing. Nobody, on their deathbed says they wish they'd spent more time at work. And yet we will disrupt family vacations. We'll disrupt, date night. We'll disrupt or miss the ballet recital or
You actually did miss my ballet recital last time. So I just want to let you know that I did know that you weren't there.
And it's really funny. I didn't know that a male ballerina is a ballerino until you told me that. So that's, yeah. It is interesting. If you look at people and say, where do you spend your time? That's where your heart is, right?
Yeah.
That's where your heart is.
Well said. Yeah.
So you talk about too, the second step is to trim the to-dos. That's really hard, I think, for high achievers, and particularly those that think they're on the fast track, to delegate more. To talk about, where do you start to trim the to-dos?
Well, and one of the things we recommend with our clients too is, a shorter, simple list means you'll actually get more done.
Right.
So the evening before, write down or type out, your top priorities for the day. It may only just, take a minute or so, but it really does get your mind set for, okay, these are the things I have to get accomplished. Because what happens by 9 o'clock on the next day is all of a sudden you're getting emails, you're getting distractions, you know what you have to get done, and you can start prioritizing. As one of our friends says, if you have, 8 boxes on your truck behind you, those are your
Right.
8 hours in the day. If something new comes on, a box has to go off. And you've got to start thinking about which box is going to go off, which one's coming on. And it really helps you prioritize what really is important based on your goals.
It's really interesting. I've got this new little journal. It's called the 5 Minute Journal. And one of the questions that asks you at the beginning of the day is, what are 3 things that would make this a great day? It doesn't say, what are the 15 things that'll make today a great day, right?
Yeah.
It's 3. And a friend of mine gave me a tip. He said, look, if you only got one thing done that would make it a great, what would that one thing be? And it was really helpful for me because, I make lists like a lot of us do. And I think, I've got to check off everything. And he said, well, yeah, but if you could just check off one thing, that would make a great day. And so at the end of the day, you can say, look, I didn't get a lot of things done. I got the one really important
Mhm.
thing done. And that makes
I
for a
love
good
that.
day.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, and somebody said great comments coming in too from everybody joining us. Edith, about talking about work-life balance, and Dean. I often hear my coworkers are all workaholics too, so it's okay. Yeah, yeah,
we're, we're
yeah.
all on the same boat, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Everybody's, smoking dope. It's like, no, yeah, yeah, yeah. There are ways to, to kind of pull back yourself. And then, but it's a good question, Jess. What if you were in this environment? Because we work with some, like, for example, Wall Street executives, where it is hard charging. You put in hours. You're there Saturday. You're there late on every day, weekday. So what if you're in an environment like that? How do you create little, maybe an oasis within your workplace?
Yeah, I think up front, you need to set boundaries. I love the story of Clayton Christensen, who early on in his consulting career, they called a meeting on a Sunday. And he said, I should have made this more clear. I'm very devout in my faith, and I don't work on Sundays. And it was an important meeting to get ready for a big client.
Yeah.
And they said, well, okay, well, let me go talk to the team. And the team comes back and says, well, okay, how about if we meet, Saturday at 2 o'clock? And he goes, gosh, I should have told you that I'm really committed to my family, right? That was his priorities. Saturdays are family time. And he got really angry and frustrated and went back and talked to the team. And then he came back and he said, so, Clay, do you work on Fridays?
Well,
The
Friday's
point
the day I
is,
get ready for my weekend. Yeah,
yeah. Fridays, yes. Yeah. So the thing is, I think if upfront you're very clear
yeah,
on what you will and won't do, it helps set those parameters. The unfortunate thing is that we easily make compromises, right? I never work on a Sunday. Well, I've got to travel on a Sunday, so I can work on Monday and so on. It's easy to blur those lines, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And so this brings us to another one too, where what we talked about was there so many people we work with, especially our perfectionists. We talked
Right.
about this in our book Anxiety at Work, and while we all want to do quality work, perfectionism can really undermine what we're trying to accomplish. And especially as if you're a middle manager, you want to become a executive, or you're executive, you want to be seen as perfect in all you do. We have to learn what good enough looks like and be able to move quickly.
Yeah, and make that again the parameters up front. Look, I just need a one sheet with 5 bullet points. I don't need a 150 slide deck with
Mhm.
animation and links to the latest TED Talk. Um, that idea of too, and you explain this so well, Adrian, that there's a difference between the perfectionist and the diligent striver. The diligent striver actually gets a lot done, whereas the
Yeah.
perfectionist can be inhibited and maybe not even try if they don't think they can do it perfectly. So talk a little bit about that. You explained it a lot better than I do.
No, I mean that was wonderful. I mean, because with perfectionism, many times they just don't get started because they're
Right.
so afraid of making a mistake. Where a diligent striver, we want our airline pilot to do everything perfectly, right? We want the person doing our heart surgery to follow the book. There are times where we want somebody to do everything by the book, but most, it was Winston Churchill who says, perfection is the enemy of progress. And we, especially as leaders, have to teach those in our care that's good enough. Let's move on. And it just came back to what you just said about setting the parameters there. I remember my son Tony, when he was starting working in the genetics lab,
Right.
you remember Timmy telling this story. He was given decade-old samples to work on because he was the new guy. So, after a few days, he was only getting 7 or 8 out of 10 to work. And he knows how to extract DNA, he says, from just about anything, but it wasn't working. And he was getting more and more frustrated. And end of the week, the professor comes in and runs the lab and says, that's about right. 7 or 8 out of 10. Good work. And he says, I hadn't been eating, I hadn't been sleeping. Why hadn't somebody told me at the beginning, set that parameter that, 70 or 80% is good enough. Keep moving and keep doing these samples.
Yeah, I love the idea about, you're taking up golf, 18 holes. So a perfect score is 18, right? That doesn't even happen in putt-putt, you know. So what are the expectations? Well, listen, if you haven't been following Adrian in Forbes magazine, please do. This is a Do You Suffer from a Workplace Addiction? 4 ways to break that habit. You should sign up, follow him, as well as follow him on LinkedIn. Adrian publishes a lot of great stuff that'll help you be the leader that your team deserves, the leader you want to be, and to create that wonderful culture. Well, brings us to number 4 here, Adrian. Consider the glass half full.
Yeah, and this is, I was coaching an executive recently who has been so focused on getting promoted, and it may or may not happen, and we're certainly working and on it, but there's so many other factors that come in. And as I just mentioned to him, will it make your family love you more? Will you feel, more proud of yourself? Will it make you that much more money? No, it was no to all those things. And so sometimes we get so focused on what we don't have, we don't focus on what we do. And that's what we need to focus in on in our lives is we've accomplished so much where we are already. Be happy with where we're at.
Yeah, focus on what you have and not so much about what you don't have. I'll tell you, it's interesting as we talk about these 4 things and reevaluating your goals, your to-dos, and quit striving for perfection. I think this one about consider the glass half full is really important. We're getting comments about, well, so what if you find yourself in a toxic environment where you're micromanaged and no matter what you do, it's not good enough? I think that's again where you really have to reevaluate your goals, and you have to say, look, is this what I want to get up and go to every morning?
Yeah.
Is this the workplace that's going to help me grow, not just as a professional? Is it going to help me grow as a person? And those are tough choices, because we have economic considerations. We've got, our status, and, you don't want to be known as the person that jumps, jobs every 6 months, although that's not as big a deal as it used to be. We want to find that place. We want to find our tribe. And I think that focusing on what you have rather than what you don't have really is so important. Well, Adrian, we're always tight on time here. We've got about a minute to go.
Wow.
If there was one thing from the conversation this morning that you wanted people to walk away with, what would be that key element? That one thing that if we got it done today would be a good day. Well,
maybe I'll give you that one thing. I'll just answer one of those. What kind of comes to my mind when people ask about these things. If I'm in this environment and it's not conducive to my mental health or to how I feel, I'm in the wrong culture. There's 3 things to do. One is you get out of Dodge, right? The second is you go along to get along, you cash the paycheck, you find fulfillment elsewhere. The third is you try and change that culture. And that takes bravery. As you said, we're all worrying about, cashing our paychecks, keeping employed. But that's really where change can happen, is where people care enough to try and change those environments from within.
Yeah. Nobody said it would be easy, right?
Yeah.
It's so interesting as you get older in your career and you get more experience. It is interesting how you look back and say, gosh, I wish I had maybe done things a little differently. I wish I had maybe had a coach. I wish I had a better boss. We can't change the past. So the idea is, where are we now? How full is our glass now? Our glass is half full. It's not half empty. And if you find that you've got that workplace addiction, take a break every now and again. Look around. Think about your family. Think about your friends. Think about your faith. What's important to you? And are you spending enough time there? And break that workplace addiction. Well, I'm Chester Elton. This is Adrian Gostick, my good friend and co-author. This has been the Culture Works live stream. We hope there were a couple of good takeaways for you today on how to build a better career, be a better leader, and create that culture where everybody is all in. Adrian, I will let you have the last word.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon.